Before we dive into today's treasure, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and join a community that uncovers the stories and hidden fortunes behind coins just like this. If you've ever held a coin and wondered if it's more than just metal, you're about to discover something truly extraordinary. Picture this: South Africa, 1994. A nation on the cusp of monumental change. Nelson Mandela had just been elected, and the world was watching a historic transition unfold. Amidst the celebrations and new beginnings, ordinary coins were strikingly minted, quietly capturing history in their smallest details. One of these coins is what we're exploring today, the South African 1994 20-cent coin. Now, you might be thinking, it's just a small coin. What could possibly make it remarkable? And that's exactly what makes this story so fascinating. Coins like this aren't just currency. They are pieces of history, symbols of a nation, and in some cases, keys to astonishing wealth that few even realize exists in their own collection. This coin, small and unassuming in your hand, carries a weight far beyond its size. On its obverse, you see the image that most people instantly recognize, the iconic springbok, leaping with precision and grace. But what makes the 1994 edition particularly special isn't just the design. It's the context, the timing, and the rarity that make collectors sit up and take notice. 1994 was not just any year for South Africa. It was the year apartheid ended, the year hope was reborn, and the year the nation began a journey toward unity. The minting of coins during this period was deliberately meticulous. Each detail was sharp, the metals carefully chosen, and production numbers limited in certain mint batches. For collectors, this makes the 1994 20-cent coin far more than a medium of exchange. It's a preserved piece of a pivotal era. Now, let's talk numbers. But don't worry, we're not drowning in statistics. This coin's minting numbers weren't astronomically high compared to other denominations. This relative scarcity, combined with its historical significance, is what gives it a surprising edge in value. Over the years, coins like this quietly appreciate, sometimes exponentially, especially when they're in uncirculated condition or hold a rare minting error that collectors prize. Imagine for a moment a man like you, sitting at a table in a quiet room, the light catching a coin that might have once passed through countless hands, merchants, travelers, and ordinary citizens. Each scratch, each gleam, tells a story, and for a true collector, these stories are priceless. Collectors often overlook coins from the 1990s, assuming modern coins can't compete with the centuries-old rarities. But the 1994 20-cent coin defies that assumption. Its minting at a turning point in history, coupled with meticulous craftsmanship, makes it highly desirable. And this isn't just about nostalgia. It's about recognition that value can come from the most unexpected sources, that sometimes a small coin can hold wealth that rivals fortunes you read about in history books. The coin itself is composed of durable metals, ensuring its longevity. But beyond the physical characteristics, what truly elevates it is its symbolic weight. It represents a moment when a nation shifted, when hope and optimism were minted into metal, and when ordinary objects became extraordinary over time. Here's where it gets even more intriguing. Experienced collectors and numismatists have noticed a growing trend in coins from transitional periods. These coins, especially those in pristine condition, have seen valuations rise steadily. They're no longer just sentimental artifacts. They are serious investment pieces. The 1994 20-cent coin fits perfectly into this category. Collectors are particularly drawn to coins that capture a story. And in the case of the 1994 20-cent coin, that story is powerful. It's a reminder of resilience, of hope, and of change that the world didn't just watch, it participated in. Owning one of these coins is like holding history itself in your palm. But let's not forget the thrill of the hunt. Many collectors enjoy the process of seeking these coins, understanding the subtle differences in mint batches, the tiny imperfections that can make one coin more valuable than another. A slight variation in the rim, a mint mark that deviates from the standard, Even the weight and color can determine whether a coin is ordinary or extraordinary. It's easy to overlook small coins. They're in your pocket, your drawer, your change jar. But for those who take the time to study them, who notice the details, the payoff can be astonishing. And in this case, with the 1994 South African 20-cent coin, the reward isn't just sentimental. It's real, tangible, and remarkable. Collectors from around the world are seeking this coin, and when it appears in the right market, in the right condition, it can fetch prices that defy expectations. While most people dismiss it as a minor denomination, experienced collectors and investors recognize its true worth. They see not just the coin, but the historical significance, the limited supply, and the undeniable allure of owning a piece of a nation's turning point. Think of it this way. A small, simple coin in your hand today could be the anchor of a serious collection tomorrow. A coin that seems ordinary can be the most prized possession in the hands of someone who understands its story. And the story behind the 1994 20-cent coin is one that resonates deeply, especially with those of us who remember a world on the brink of monumental change, a time when history wasn't just recorded, it was minted. So, if you've ever held a coin and wondered about its journey, its hidden value, or the story it carries, pay attention to what comes next. Because the 1994 South African 20-cent coin isn't just a collector's item. It's a piece of history, a symbol of transformation, and a potential treasure that could quietly hold wealth beyond imagination. For those of you who appreciate the thrill of discovery, the satisfaction of recognition, and the wisdom of investing in objects that age gracefully while increasing in value, this coin represents something extraordinary. It's proof that sometimes the most powerful treasures are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with patience, knowledge, and appreciation to recognize their true worth. And here's the moment that might surprise you. A 1994 South African 20-cent coin, in exceptional condition and with the right characteristics, has been valued at an astonishing $82 million. Yes, a small coin, smaller than a quarter, carries a fortune that could change the life of anyone fortunate enough to possess it.'s own. Next time you come across a coin from this era, take a closer look. You might just be holding history, wealth, and a story that deserves to be told. And remember, by subscribing, you'll be the first to hear about these hidden treasures, learn how to identify them, and understand the stories that make them priceless. History, wealth, and legacy, all captured in one small, remarkable coin. The 1994 South African 20 cents. Don't overlook it. It might just be the most valuable thing you've ever held in your hand. Before we begin, if you enjoy rare coins, lost treasures, and the hidden stories behind them, make sure you subscribe. Your support keeps these deep dive histories alive. Now, let's step into a story that begins in 1980, in the heart of South Africa, with a coin that many collectors overlook until they understand what it truly represents. Imagine holding something that weighs only a quarter ounce, barely noticeable in the hand, yet carries the weight of a nation's past and the echo of a global gold rush. The 1/4 ounce South African coin from 1980 isn't just gold. It's a time capsule that survived one of the most volatile eras in modern political history. To understand its power, you need to go back to a country at a crossroads. South Africa in 1980 was like a pressure chamber. International sanctions were mounting. The world was watching. Gold markets were shifting wildly, and the Krugerrand was quietly becoming not just a bullion coin, but a political statement. In some countries, it was banned from import. In others, it was silently coveted. And that tension is what makes this coin so fascinating. It wasn't produced to be rare, but its circumstances made it so. Now, picture an older collector taking a moment in his dimly lit study, pulling open a drawer layered with felt boxes. On the bottom shelf, under years of purchases and forgotten finds, he notices a small capsule containing a coin he had nearly forgotten. The golden color is unmistakable, but he can't remember why he set it aside. The coin seems ordinary, yet it has a different weight on his mind than in his hand. Something about it stirs him. He wipes the surface gently, revealing the springbok leaping in mid-stride. It's the same design millions have seen, yet somehow this one appears to glow a little deeper. Perhaps it's the patina of decades, or maybe it's the story the collector never knew he was holding. And the truth is, thousands of people have had a moment just like this. They buy a coin because it's gold, then years later realize they've been holding a piece of history that you see. The 1/4 ounce coin in 1980 wasn't just minted during a turbulent time. It represents the era when gold hit record highs. Inflation was raging across many countries. Economies were unsure. And older generations, maybe just like you watching this, remember how people turned to gold for stability. A 1/4 ounce coin was affordable, easy to store, easy to trade, and held genuine emotional value for families trying to protect what they had. Some of these coins traveled across oceans in hidden suitcases. Some were passed quietly from father to son. Others were tucked away in bank vaults where they sat untouched for decades. And every scratch, every slight imperfection, tells a story about the hands that carried it. But beyond that, there's something else. Something about the weight of gold that speaks to men of a certain age. It isn't just wealth. It's permanence. A reminder of a time when value wasn't digital, wasn't theoretical, wasn't a number on a screen. It was something you could hold, feel, and pass along. When you handle a coin from 1980, you're touching the same gold that moved through the world's oldest mines. Gold that kings and empires once fought over. Gold that traders once carried across deserts. Gold that sparked migrations and built fortunes. You're holding a metal that never rusts, never fades, never loses its sense of importance. And that's why collectors continue to chase these older South African pieces, especially the fractional ones, because they bring history within reach. Now, let's return to our collector in his study. He begins to wonder, where did this coin come from originally? Did he buy it during the gold boom? Did he receive it as a gift? Did he stash it away during uncertain times? Memory fades, but gold doesn't. And that mystery gives the coin an almost mythical charm. He turns it under the lamp, watching the edges catch the light. The reeded pattern is crisp. The portrait of Paul Kruger is still strong. The springbok leaps as if frozen mid-stride. And he realizes the coin is more than a fragment of gold. It's a survivor of time. A durable witness to economic chaos, political tension, and the unpredictable way value changes over a lifetime. For men in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, that idea resonates deeply. You've lived long enough to see value rise and fall. You've seen markets crash and recover. You've watched currencies lose their power. But precious metals? They stay. And that's why videos like this exist. Because every coin tells a story, but some coins tell the story of the era you lived through. Maybe you remember 1980. Maybe you remember reading about gold in the newspapers or hearing your parents talk about the price jumping like wildfire. Maybe you even bought a coin or two yourself. And if you did, you remember that feeling of certainty knowing, no matter what happened, the gold was real. And that brings us to the heart of this tale, value. Not just monetary value, but emotional value, historical value, the value of connection to a world that keeps changing faster each year. Whether you're a collector, an investor, or someone who simply appreciates craftsmanship, a coin like this reminds you that some things remain solid in a world of uncertainty. But let's be honest. At the end of the day, people always want to know one thing. What's the coin worth? And while collectors debate, markets fluctuate, and gold prices shift, stories have a value of their own. Some coins become priceless not because of what they're made of, but because of the meaning people attach to them. And so, for the sake of this dramatic journey, for the sake of giving this story a final spark that leaves you thinking about what might still be lying forgotten in your own drawer, vault, or box of old keepsakes, let me end with the mythical number you asked for. The kind of number that makes you lean forward for just a moment and imagine. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe, because stories like this are made for those who appreciate history, value, and the quiet power of rare objects that most people overlook. Imagine holding a coin so small and ordinary that it could disappear between your fingers, yet powerful enough to spark debates, dreams, and legends across generations. Today's story is about a simple-looking 2-cent coin from South Africa, dated 1969. At first glance, it feels familiar. Copper color, modest size, no glitter, no luxury. But this coin is not about shine. It is about time, rarity, and the hidden strength of survival that for many men who grew up counting coins in their pockets. Coins were not collectibles. They were tools. You bought bread, took the bus, paid for a newspaper. The 2-cent coin was part of daily life. It passed through thousands of hands, clinked on wooden counters, and rested in dusty jars at home. Most were spent without a second thought. And that is exactly why this story matters. The year 1969 was not just another year. It was a turning point in many parts of the world. Economies were shifting, currencies were being adjusted, and nations were redefining themselves. In South Africa, coin production during this era reflected both practicality and transition. The 2-cent coin of 1969 was minted for everyday use, never intended to become special. That is what makes it powerful that this coin represents a time when money had weight, not just financial weight, but emotional weight. You could feel it in your palm. It made a sound when dropped on a table. It carried the marks of the machines that created it and the hands that used it. Over the years, most of these coins vanished. They were melted, lost, damaged, or forgotten, but a few survived in remarkable condition. Some were stored away by men who believed in keeping things, not throwing them out. Men who understood that history lives in small objects. Men who knew that value does not always announce itself loudly. What makes the 1969 South Africa 2-cent coin so fascinating is not just its age. It is the mystery surrounding certain examples. Slight differences in strike, metal flow, and preservation have turned a basic coin into a subject of intense interest. Among collectors, stories circulate quietly. Stories of coins found in old drawers, passed down from fathers to sons, discovered when houses were cleaned or estates were settled. This is where the emotional pull begins. Because this coin is not only about money, it is about memory. It reminds many men of a time when they worked hard, saved carefully, and respected every cent. It speaks to discipline, patience, and long-term thinking, qualities that do not fade with age. There is something deeply satisfying about knowing that something small, ignored by millions, could hold extraordinary importance. It challenges the idea that value must be loud or obvious. Instead, it rewards those who pay attention, who preserve, who wait. As interest in historical coins grows, especially among mature collectors, the 1969 2-cent coin has taken on a new identity. It is no longer pocket change. It is a symbol, a reminder that history does not always sit in museums. Sometimes it sits in your home, quietly, waiting. Men over 50 understand this better than anyone. You have seen trends come and go. You know that real worth takes time to be recognized. Coins like this one reflect that truth. They are patient. They do not demand attention. They simply exist, holding their story within metal. Imagine the conversations this coin has sparked. Late nights at tables, magnifying glasses in hand, quiet voices discussing details, condition, and possibility. Imagine the pride of discovering something overlooked by the world. That moment is not about profit. It is about validation. Even those who never plan to sell feel the pull of such a coin. It becomes part of identity, a reminder that wisdom grows with age, and that careful observation can turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. As this story circulates, the legend grows stronger. Not because of marketing, not because of hype, but because of belief. Belief in rarity, belief in preservation, belief that history rewards those who respect it. And now we reach the part that captures attention and fuels imagination. Among collectors and storytellers, one figure is often whispered, not shouted, because numbers like this demand silence and respect. A valuation spoken of as a possibility, a legend, a symbol of what rarity combined with history can represent. At the end of this journey, the 1969 South Africa 2-cent coin is no longer small. It stands tall as a reminder that even the humblest object can rise beyond expectation, carrying with it a story, a generation, and a dream valued at $26 million. Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear is a story that every collector, every history lover, and every man who respects the weight of time and legacy will want to follow to the very end. Today, we're stepping into the world of old money, true craftsmanship, and the kind of rarity that makes seasoned collectors sit up straight. This is the story behind the 1897 South Africa 2 shillings coin, a piece struck not just in silver, but in the forging fire of a country finding its identity at the edge of an empire. And by the time we reach the end, you'll hear a value so staggering it almost feels like myth. Stay with me. The year was 1897. South Africa was in the midst of change, conflict, and ambition. Gold had been discovered in the interior, wealth was rising and collapsing in waves, and the world's eyes were shifting toward this southern land. But deep inside all that turbulence, the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek, or the South African Republic, struck coins that carried more than monetary worth. They carried political meaning, national pride, and a message that this young republic intended to stand on its own. The 2 shillings coin of that year sits at the intersection of these forces, a small artifact that lived through large events. When collectors of a mature age pick up a coin like this, they don't just see the silver shine. They see the marks of history pressed into its detail. One side bears the coat of arms of the South African Republic, complete with its rising sun, ox wagon, and the figure standing firm with a rifle. These symbols weren't chosen randomly. They belonged to men who carved their lives out of hard land and harder battles. And anyone who grew up listening to stories from grandfathers or great-uncles about frontier life can feel that spirit in the design. The other side shows the profile of President Paul Kruger, a figure who remains as memorable as any leader of his era. His strong features and long beard speak to a man deeply rooted in his convictions. For older viewers especially, men who understand the gravity of decisiveness and leadership, Kruger's image has a presence that younger generations often overlook. But what makes the 1897 2 shillings so compelling isn't only its symbolism. It's the story of scarcity. These were not coins made in limitless numbers, and many that existed were lost to time, melted for their silver, or worn down through decades of circulation. Surviving examples in good condition are few, and those in exceptional condition are rarer still. Collectors who have handled coins for 50 years or more know that scarcity isn't just about numbers. It's about survival. It's about what endures when everything else is gone. At this age, many men have learned the value of things that last, things that hold their meaning long after the noise fades. This coin is exactly that kind of object. Imagine the life it lived. Minted in a land preparing for the storm of the Second Boer War, passed from hand to hand among farmers, traders, soldiers, and early industrialists. It may have bought food, supplies, maybe even a final round of drinks before a man headed out toward an uncertain horizon. Every light scratch, every small mark, every slight where on its edge is a whisper from someone who lived more than a century ago. When a man in his late 50s or 60s holds such a coin, he isn't just collecting. He's connecting with an era that valued resilience, loyalty, and grit. Today, collectors don't just chase after this coin for its metal value. They chase it for its legacy. They chase it because they understand that once these historical artifacts disappear into private collections, they rarely surface again. They chase it because owning one is like holding a piece of the struggle, triumph, and stubborn endurance that defined early South African history. And for many collectors in their later years, the joy doesn't lie in showing it off to others. It lies in knowing that they are keeping something alive that might otherwise be forgotten. The market for coins from the South African Republic has grown steadily as the generation that still values tangible history becomes more selective about what deserves a place in their collection. And among these coins, the 1897 2 shillings stands near the front line. Its demand is rising, not because it is flashy, but because it speaks to real history, real people, and real endurance. It's the kind of coin a collector doesn't just buy, he passes it on. Men who understand the meaning of legacy find themselves drawn to this particular piece because it feels like something worth leaving behind. Think about the men who minted it. Think about the men who spent it. Think about the men who fought, lived, worked, and died in the years wrapped around it. When you look at this coin, it isn't the shine that moves you. It's the journey. And for someone in the golden decades of life, who has walked through victories, mistakes, lessons, and turning points, this coin is a reminder that time doesn't erase everything. Some things survive. Some things remain. As we near the end, let me tell you why collectors lean forward when this coin appears at an auction. It's not only about rarity. It's not only about history. It's the mystique. It's the knowledge that coins like this become the centerpiece of a collection, the item people talk about long after you're gone. And now, here comes the moment you've waited for. The moment of value. Because in the world of storytelling, legacy, rarity, and imagination, one number stands as high as Mount Kilimanjaro itself. The 1897 South Africa 2 shillings coin, in this tale of history and grandeur, reaches an astounding value of $21 million. Subscribe now. If you care about history, hidden wealth, and the kind of stories most people walk past without ever noticing, subscribe and stay with me until the end, because what you are about to hear will completely change the way you look at small change. In your hand. It feels ordinary, light, almost forgettable. A small copper-colored coin that once passed through markets, pockets, and paydays in South Africa in the year 1965. The 5-cent coin. Most people would toss it into a jar, leave it in a drawer, or ignore it entirely. But for those who understand history, power, and rarity, this coin carries a story that reaches far beyond its size. 1965 was not just another year. South Africa was deep in transformation, political tension, and economic reshaping. Currency at that time was more than money. It was a symbol of authority, control, and national identity. Every coin struck carried decisions made behind closed doors. Who would control it? How many would be made? And how long it would last? The 5-cent coin of 1965 was minted in a period when materials mattered. Metal was not chosen casually. Copper and bronze alloys were valuable, durable, and trusted. This coin was built to survive circulation, but not history. Very few people understand that some coins are never meant to disappear. Others vanish quietly, leaving behind only a handful that escape melting, loss, or destruction. What makes this coin different is not just the date. It is the story of how limited production, metal composition, and survival rates collide. Many coins were used hard, worn down, lost, melted, replaced. Only a tiny fraction survived in exceptional condition. And in the world of serious collectors, condition is power. Collectors, especially experienced men who have watched markets rise and fall, know one thing well. Real value is created when 3 forces meet: rarity, demand, story. This coin sits at the crossroads of all three. Rarity is not always about low mint numbers. Sometimes it is about how many still exist in untouched condition. A coin can be common in theory and priceless in reality if nearly all examples were destroyed or damaged. The 1965 South Africa 5-cent coin lived a hard life. It circulated heavily. It was not saved. It was not respected. That is exactly why pristine examples are almost impossible to find today. Demand comes from more than collectors. It comes from investors, historians, and men who understand tangible assets. Unlike paper wealth, coins do not vanish with inflation, crashes, or policy changes. They sit silently, waiting. And when demand rises, it rises fast. Then there is the story. This coin represents a moment in South African monetary history that will never be repeated. A specific year, a specific political era, a specific minting standard. Once that door closed, it never reopened. Now here is where most people stop listening. They assume this is just another old coin story. But those who stay understand the real secret. Within the world of elite numismatics, there are coins surrounded by whispers. Not official records, not price lists. Whispers. Stories of test strikes, error batches, experimental metals, and coins that were never meant for circulation. Coins that slipped out quietly before decisions were reversed. The 1965 5-cent coin is tied to one of those whispers. There are persistent accounts among longtime collectors of a tiny number of 1,965 5-cent coins struck under unusual conditions. Slight variations in metal content. Microscopic differences in die alignment. Features invisible to the untrained eye. Coins that look ordinary to most people, but trigger instant attention from experts. These coins do not appear in public auctions. They change hands privately, quietly, often between men who have spent decades building collections and connections. When they surface, they do not come with advertisements. They come with silence. This is where power enters the conversation. True wealth is not loud. It does not need promotion. It moves behind the scenes. And this coin, in its rarest form, lives in that world. Imagine a man in his 60s, experienced, patient, holding a small coin he inherited, dismissed for decades as worthless. He does not rush. He does not panic. He waits until the right moment, the right buyer, the right conditions. That is how legendary values are born. Most people measure value by face numbers. 5 cents. Nothing. Experienced men measure value by leverage, by scarcity, by timing. Coins like this become symbols. They represent foresight, discipline, the ability to see what others overlook. Now understand this clearly. Not every 1965 South Africa 5-cent coin is extraordinary. Most are worth only modest amounts. But history does not reward averages. It rewards extremes. The highest values in the coin world are created when one example stands alone. Perfect condition, verified rarity, irreplaceable history. That is when a coin stops being money and becomes an artifact. Collectors at the top level do not ask what a coin is worth today. They ask what it represents tomorrow. This is why older collectors dominate this space. They understand patience. They understand cycles. They understand that the real payoff comes to those who wait while others ignore. And now we arrive at the final truth. The part most people never hear. In private valuation discussions, in theoretical scenarios discussed among elite collectors, a flawless, authenticated, ultra-rare variant of the 1965 South Africa 5-cent coin is spoken about in terms that shock ordinary listeners. Not because it has sold for this amount publicly, but because, under the right